Hello, how the tech are you? This is our weekly tech show on Echoplex Media. I am historian Matt, and I usually talk about tech news and science news and stuff like that, but I'm not going to talk about FTX or Twitter this time around. I got other stuff. I'm actually not going to do news at all. I'm going to talk about learning to Lisp. Ooh, I spelled that wrong. But anyways, Learn to Lisp Part 5, Other Data Structures. This is the kind of it's not the final one here, but it's going to be the last in a short sequence to kind of finish up learning to Lisp. And since I have HK here and he needs to learn to Lisp, a real programming language, decided to do it. So HK, what do you got?
All right, I am HK Perrin, and I am a software engineer, so I generally cover software engineering news. And this week, I've got a big story about Mastodon. Version 4.0 came out with a lot of new features, so we're going to talk about that. And then my second story is actually something I myself created. It's a program called QuickDAV, and I got it in the Microsoft Store. So I'm quite excited about that. And Dave, what do you got?
So surprisingly enough, there's really not much Elon on my list this week. I got Elizabeth Holmes gets sentenced. I got Intel claims they have a fake catcher that can detect deepfakes within milliseconds on a video file. And then former president was reinstated on Twitter. And take it away, Matt.
All right. I'm going to do Learn to Lisp Part 5, Other Data Structures. So we covered some data structures in Lisp in previous parts of the show. These are some that we didn't get to quite yet, but they're pretty important to the way Lisp works, and it's sort of the beginning of the end. I want to get to one final thing that's really cool about Lisp, but you need to know these data structures before we get there. So what am I going to talk about? So the first thing I want to talk about is keywords, our keywords. So keywords are symbolic identifiers that evaluate to themselves. I mean, they provide fast equality tests, and like symbols, they have names and optional namespaces and stuff like that. They start with a colon, and naming rules are like a symbol. So keywords, they're really kind of confusing. I thought they're like probably the most confusing thing when you start learning Lisp. I mean, they're really easy to use, and it takes a little bit to get used to like when to use them, but they're basically used as, in other languages where you'd have strings, but these strings are like not coming from the user, right? They're not coming from external input. They're used like internally to do different things. And I'll give some examples of that a little bit later, and it'll hopefully make sense. But before I do that, show some examples of keywords. So these are 3 keywords. The first one is just name. I didn't have a good name for it, so I just called it names. It's just keyword starts with a colon, and it's just the text. And then if you want like a multi-worded keyword, you can use various different symbols. It is limited. It's symbol to various different characters. Special characters. It's similar to way pretty much anything in other languages, like symbols and stuff in other languages. But in Lisp, generally, and Clojure, which this comes from as well, we generally use dash to separate out words. And it looks kind of weird, but it's just kind of consistent for Lisp languages. And then finally, keywords, unlike strings, can have a namespace. So this last one is the family name keyword is in the user namespace. It's kind of silly because the other ones are actually also in the user namespace because that's just the default namespace. But I wanted to show how that's done. You can put whatever namespace you want in there to add it to whatever namespace. This is useful sometimes when you're doing stuff. Oftentimes you have libraries that use the same keywords, have different namespaces, or it's useful that way to separate them out by namespace. So that's keywords real fast. So now we get down to something actually like useful. The first one is sets. So sets are a collection of unique values. If you've been programming in most languages, you'll you've run into sets before. They're just collections of stuff. They're unordered, unlike lists, and they're basically optimized to test if you have a contain. So do you contain something in it? The set literal, which is what you'd write in there. You can make them different ways, but if most of the time you'll just make a set literal in your code. That's basically you start with a hash symbol and the open curly brace, and then you list your items. Generally speaking, well, in Lisp and Clojure, the comma is white space. So oftentimes you can use them whenever you want, but most of the time people just leave off commas. There's certain times when they don't. But it's just a list of whatever you want to put in the list, and finally close it with a curly brace at the end. And of course, I have examples. So here's some quick examples. So this first part is the literal that somebody would type in to their code, and then I have a little arrow that says, what it actually evaluates to. This is the first one. It's not important. It's just a set with the keyword a in it, and so this is one of the uses of keywords, is just have it in here. There are reasons why you'd want to do that. A lot of times you wouldn't use a keyword. In a set, it would probably be a string, but we'll get to some other uses for keywords in a minute. And then the second one is a set where they've added keywords A, B, C, and D. But you notice when it's evaluated, the order is mixed up because there's no order, no specified order, and you're just using it for contains. It's really like a hash set, so it's whatever the hash order is. And then finally, you can mix in the set. You can mix the items, the types in the set. You generally wouldn't do this, but sometimes you might. Very, very rarely you would do it. So you have in this last one, you have the keyword A, the string foo, and the number 5, and they get mixed up in the order again because it's hash order. So that's sets. And then the final data structure I want to show are maps. And again, if you've done any programming, you've probably run into maps of some sort. They're probably called something else. In Java, they're hash maps, or I don't know what else they call them, tree maps, I think, or some. But they're maps, in
tree maps are very different than hash maps.
Yes, but they're still maps, and that's the important thing.
Okay, yeah.
What is in Java? It's like is it a dict in Java, or is it still maps or JavaScript?
JavaScript, there is a map, but you can also just use an object. Objects basically do the same thing as maps, but they do have a maintained key order, which is it is strange, but you can actually also just use the map class to define an actual map.
Yeah. So a map in Clojure, anyways, Lisp in general. Well, for Clojure that has a fast access log32n for their hash maps. You don't really get a choice of if you want to do tree maps or whatever. It's going to be like basically a hash map. You can make the other types of maps if you do it sort of more manually, if that makes sense. But the standard map is a hash map. The one that you can use making a literal, which I'll show how to do in a sec. And then finally, you can actually order the maps, the keys in the map, or you can leave them unordered for fast hash maps. You have to, I think you have to do some special stuff to make it an actual ordered map if you want to do that. And then finally, the literal is it looks very similar to a set, and that's kind of annoying, but also why I wanted to add a set for this. But it's basically, instead of starting with the hash, you actually just start with the curly brace. Then you list pairs of items. So one's the key, the second one is the value in the map. And you keep listing pairs until you're done, and you add a closing curly brace. And I'll show you what that looks like. So this first one is a map that goes from the keyword foo to the string bar. And that's one of the big uses for keywords, is basically as keys into a map. You'll see them very often as keys in the map. There's some other uses, but you'll see it very often. So the second one I have, second example is, mappings from keywords to numbers. And the first one's A to 1, B to 2, and C to 3. This one has commas in here. you wouldn't always put commas. Often what people do is instead of listing them out straight like this is you'd stack them with each line being a separate mapping. So the first one is, A to 1, and the second one would be B to 2, and the third one C to 3, each on their own lines. And then you wouldn't have commas in there at all because you don't really need them. They're separated on the line breaks. You can see them either way in this, but sometimes when I have it listed out like this, I like to have the commas here.
You said that the comma acts as white space, right?
It's considered white space, yeah. So it means absolutely nothing.
So if your second example there didn't have any commas at all, it would still evaluate to the same thing?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What happens if you have a key without a value?
You'd have a problem if you have an odd number of items between the curly braces, right? So if it doesn't it can't be evaluated into a map, it would throw an exception, basically.
Okay.
And then the last one I'm just showing you can map from strings to numbers. You can even do numbers to strings, whatever you want to do. So I have, names, strings of names of Fred, Bob, and Angela, and then some random numbers. I think the numbers actually came from something when I looked this up, but I don't remember anymore.
Do the types have to be consistent?
Well, technically, no. They can be any type, but you would really always want to have consistent types. You'd always want, if you probably always want either keywords or strings for the keys, and the values can be whatever, but you'd probably want them to be the same type because generally when you use them, you're expecting certain types.
But you can mix types.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very loosey-goosey, but it's duck typing type thing. If it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, then it must be of type duck, right?
Matt, it really reminds me of PHP.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
I figured that would get under your skin.
I actually never used PHP. I've looked at it, but I never really seriously used it. So
syntactically, it's extremely different, but
yeah,
with regard to anything can be any type, it's similar.
Yeah, well, it's pretty common in a lot of scripting languages for that kind of thing, to do that sort of thing. And then you generally just use the same types by convention. You don't mess around with the types. There are some, I've used some scripting languages where they get really strict about the types and it gets really annoying really fast.
TypeScript is like that. I code in TypeScript and I love TypeScript.
Sometimes it works fine. It kind of depends on how they deal with it.
It has saved me so many headaches. So many times I'll do something and TypeScript will be like, "You idiot, that is not a string. That is very clearly a number. I know that. How did you not know that?" And I'm like, "Oh, thank you, TypeScript." It's a bit more polite in its messages, but you know what I mean.
Maybe you could fork it and make it impolite.
Impolite TypeScript.
That's all I got for my slides, by the way.
Okay. So
I like the concept of impolite TypeScript.
I don't understand any of that, but some of it looked like quantum grammar. I don't know if you know what quantum grammar is. At the very beginning. Is it
related to lambda calculus?
Well, no, but there's a guy who thinks he's the postmaster general of the universe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some of it looked a little like quantum grammar.
He's probably kind of faking that sort of thing.
Lots of colons and hyphens.
But I will have to remind you that the universe was in fact made from or written in Lisp.
I don't think that's true. I think the universe was written in Perl.
That's true.
How else do you explain all the issues?
Fair enough. Somewhere I have the comic for that.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not a programmer, but I hope other people out there who are programmers and have never tried Lisp maybe give it a go because of this series you've done here.
Yep. Cool. So, because it's HK's turn.
All right. So this week I've got a really cool story. It's about Mastodon. In case you don't know, we run our own Mastodon instance called port87.social. And just this morning I upgraded it to Mastodon 4.0. Mastodon 4.0 just came out last week, and it includes some really big, awesome changes. One of the big changes is you can now follow hashtags. So if your feed is kind of bare because you're not following a lot of people, now you can follow hashtags and you'll get a much better, more rich feed. Really awesome feature. I love to see that, and I love that Mastodon is growing and evolving, and it's a really cool social network. You should definitely get on Mastodon if you haven't already, and you can get on it at port87.social. Another one of the big features is you can now translate posts. So if a post is in a foreign language that you don't speak, you can translate that to your own language. So that's really cool. User roles are now customizable. So if you have basically something where you want someone in between, like a moderator and an admin, so you want them to have moderator powers, but just a little bit more, but not quite admin powers, you can now create a role right in between there, and you can assign permissions to that role. So that's a really awesome feature. And there are also just tons of bug fixes and improvements, just much smaller things, but there are a lot of them, and it's a really, really good version. Very awesome to see that. And if your instance owner hasn't updated yet, go ahead and start bugging them, because it is really cool. It introduces a lot of features. It's a big deal. It's definitely a welcome upgrade, and I'm sure your instance owner won't be too upset if you bug them daily for this.
Yeah, so I haven't gone into it too much. I basically took what amounts to an actual day off today, except for doing this. But when you follow the hashtags, do they show up in your main feed then, or do you have to go to your hashtag feed for it?
Your main feed.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm with that.
Yeah, it's just like following a person. They'll show up in your main feed.
It's a little bit annoying for me. There might be a different something else I can do, but I'm following so many people now. My feed is just continuously changing.
It's cool. It's actually like I've been getting really into it. It's getting a lot livelier. It's definitely like it is growing fast.
Yeah.
And I love to see it, because it's such a cool program, and it's such an awesome concept, the Fediverse as a whole. It's not just Mastodon. There's other Fediverse projects that can talk with Mastodon. And I love that concept of the openness of having this platform where, if you don't like Mastodon, you can bring up a server of something else that speaks ActivityPub, and you can run that if that's what you want. It's very open, and it's such a cool concept. I absolutely love it. And I think the implementation is amazing too. Like, as I've been using it, I've just been falling more and more in love with Mastodon. It's an awesome experience.
Yeah, and just real quick, I've been seeing some stuff on Twitter where people are saying essentially that, like, if you're like not a white dude, that Mastodon isn't for you. And I feel like on a lot of servers, maybe people feel like that, but I just want to let everybody know, no matter who you are, you can obey our rules. You will find a safe place at Port 87 where people will treat you well. And we're hoping not to have like all white guys between 25 and 50 if we can avoid it. So you're more than welcome on Port 87. And if you get there and you have any questions, just go to the local feed and see who's posting the most, and post at them and be like, hey, can you help me with something? And they will probably say yes.
I would have to say, in terms of diversity, it seems way more diverse than any other social network I'm on.
Oh, well, maybe you just but you also got a good list of journalists to follow. So
yes, if anybody wants a list of journalists to follow and instantly import them into your Mastodon account, let me know.
Yeah. We're working on a dystopia beat.
At HistMat account, or you're at Matt
on
account?
HistMat, yes.
Yeah, and we're working on
HistMat. Okay.
We're working on a dystopia beat list too, so that people can follow people who are covering things like the dystopia beat, our beat. So very good, very good. So it looks like HK, you have another story, and it's again sort of about you.
I do. So this story is about QuickDAV. This is an application that I designed to make it easier. So I originally designed it to make it easier to move files from a Steam Deck to a computer, or from a computer to a Steam Deck. I submitted it to Valve, and Valve was like, you know what? That's not a game, so we're not going to put it in the Steam store, but you can release it in another way. So it's been out on Linux for a while. Linux and SteamOS, there's a version you can download for that. But very recently, I got it out on the Microsoft Store. So it is now available on Windows. If you run Windows, you can go to the Microsoft Store and get QuickDAV right now. It is $4.99, but there is a week-long trial. So if you try it out and you don't like it, then feel free to just uninstall it and forget about it. But this is an application that's designed to make it easy to transfer files between devices, and it does that through WebDAV. And WebDAV is an open protocol that a lot of different clients support. Whether you run Windows, Mac, Linux, both GNOME and KDE, and I'm sure XFCE and LXDE, I'm sure all the desktop environments, iOS, Android, there are clients for everything. Most of those systems have a client built in. So, you know, it's very cool to be able to transfer files without having to install anything on the other computer. And also, QuickDAV is built on my own open source technology. If you want to run your own WebDAV server without like just the double click an app and it loads up, if you want to run it on like a dedicated Linux machine, that server that QuickDAV uses is available to use. It's called Nephele, Nephele. It's on NPM, and you can download it and you can bring up a dedicated WebDAV server, just like, you know, like Nextcloud, for example, gives you a WebDAV server. This thing will give you a WebDAV server, and its backend is just files on your file system. So, yeah, I worked real hard on this, and it's super cool to see that it's in the Microsoft Store. I absolutely love it.
I have it installed on my NAS, and most people here just use Samba because that's what everybody's used to, but I was able to get it no problem transferring to my Linux computer here, no problem sending files back to the server, and I was able to have it work no problem in Kodi on my TV. So
awesome.
So I did, I guess, some testing for you, but I'm telling you things you already know.
The newest version too, not only can you transfer files with a WebDAV client, you can actually now just transfer files in your browser. So you open it up on whatever computer you've got that you want to transfer files from or to, and then the other computer, you just open up a browser. You open up like Chrome or Firefox or Edge or Brave or Vivaldi or Opera or Epiphany or Conqueror or Safari, or I don't know. I'm running out of browsers here.
Well, very cool.
Yeah, I would have to say I installed it on my desktop computer, but haven't actually tested it.
Well, you got to get on that.
I mean, beyond installing it and making sure that it actually, worked and at least says it was work. I didn't transfer any files.
But yeah, I'll put a link in the description, and probably I'll plaster it on top of my face right now.
I'm telling you, do a write-up and post it in on Mastodon, and we'll start sharing it everywhere.
Yeah, the history of it is actually pretty interesting. So if you want to hear about that, follow Matt on Mastodon, and I'll give him the history of it, or follow me and I'll post it, or I don't know. Follow us.
All right, cool. Well, I guess it's my turn. I just got a couple quick hits here. One, former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years and change in federal prison. She'd raised $700 million and change for a blood testing machine that did not work. And she was telling everybody that it did work, and that's fraud. She was defrauding investors. It's bad to go around defrauding people, but one of the people she defrauded was Henry Kissinger. So, I mean, I'm not that mad at her. I'm surprised she got so much time. I thought they were going to be lenient on her, because the case was done here in San Jose, where there's a pretty heavy bias toward the tech industry, in favor of the tech industry. And yeah, I just thought they weren't going to throw the book at her, and it turns out they threw the book at her.
I assume it's still a minimum security.
Yeah. Oh, I don't imagine she's going to like a labor camp, Matt.
Well, no, but
No, I mean, what? There's no. I don't.
Superbacks.
So the idea here is to take this person out of society for a while. The idea here is not to inflict punishment on them via prison violence. So I don't see any reason to put her or any other nonviolent criminal in a high security facility. The fact that you can't leave and people tell you when to get out of bed and all this stuff is bad enough. I mean, your freedom has been taken away from you. So yeah, of course she's going to be in a minimum security facility, and I would be kind of bewildered and confused to find out that she wasn't in a minimum security facility, because there's no reason to put her anywhere harsh.
Yeah, the whole thing is, I don't know if you've seen the movies they now have on it, or any of the documentaries, anything, but it just seems so dumb. Like she was trying to make this small machine that was supposed to be like the size of a printer that does all the testing and would be fairly cheap, but they had a lot of problems with that size being too small to do what they needed to do, and not putting enough blood in. And they were trying to just take like a little tiny drop of blood and do all the testing. And the thing is, if they just made a bigger machine and took more blood, they could have done it, you know?
Yeah, but those already exist, so it wouldn't have been anything novel. Like the whole point of the fraud was that she was developing something that didn't exist, and it was like amazingly novel, and that it was going to revolutionize medicine. And that's how she convinced so many people to give her their money. And she was not actually like seriously trying to work on this. She didn't think well, maybe she did think that she could, but she had no reason to, and that's why it was fraud.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on, but I'm just saying.
I mean, she also lied. She deliberately lied and said, we have this machine and it is working, when she very clearly did not.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if they made it like the size of a refrigerator, and it was cheap enough for doctors' offices to buy, and instead of taking a small drop, it would take more, a vial of blood, and was actually capable of doing all the tests, which it seemed like that might be something that could happen. That'd still be useful. Right now, the doctors have to send it off to a testing lab. The whole point was to bring it in house.
Right, but had you done that, she'd been competing with legitimate medical supply companies.
Well, yeah, and fair enough.
Like the other thing that was going on with her is she had herself convinced she was Steve Jobs, down to the turtleneck, and trying to speak a certain way. And she thought she essentially thought that she was making the iPhone of blood testing machines, or that's she was selling to her investors. I don't know. They were trying to ask for home confinement. We had covered it on Down Ballot last Tuesday, and the people the legal analysts that we watched, they were like they're not going to give her home confinement for this. Like they give people home confinement when the max is like 2 years sometimes, but she got darn near the max too. And this isn't one of those situations where she's going to be out in half of the time. That's not how federal time works. You do most of it.
Right.
You do most of the time.
I was pretty surprised at how much time she got.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would have guessed she would have got about half of what they gave her.
Yeah.
I would have guessed like 4 years, like slightly less than half.
Right. But I mean, I don't know, maybe this just goes to show you, if you're going to scam people, maybe don't choose Henry Kissinger to scam. As based as I think it is to scam Henry Kissinger, the courts are coming for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so my next story is about deepfakes. Intel claims that they have a technology called Fake Catcher, and that it can detect a deepfake in milliseconds from the beginning of a video, that it is not a real person. The technical details are in the article that I have posted here, but the gist of it is that the way that colors and lighting behaves on a real person is actually very hard to fake. It's easy enough to fake it, maybe that you and I wouldn't see it right away, but it's pretty hard to fake it in such a way that a computer program examining pixels, colors, lighting, and shading can't detect it just right away. So when deepfakes kind of came out and became like a thing people were worried about, you know, the smart people that I listened to on this stuff were like, hey, this is going to be a software arms race where the deepfakes are going to be getting better and better, but we're going to have software that detects deepfakes. And that's going to keep getting better and better and better. And we're just going to end up in this situation where, you know, maybe the deepfakes will get ahead a little bit, but then the software to detect it will catch right up. And it's just unfortunate, I guess, that Intel has this and it's not open source. I imagine they'll be charging people to use it, which is probably bad. Although it would be
I could definitely see why it's not open source, because if they made this open source, it would immediately be obsolete. You just use it to train a deepfake model.
Huh, maybe. It would maybe they'll do the right thing and, you know, put a thing on their website where you can upload a video or a part of a video and it'll examine it for you. Maybe they'll do the right thing, but not confident there. Plus, it's early days on it. It's not ready for prime time, not ready for like deployment. But I believe them when they say it works. Intel doesn't have a history of lying about the things they can accomplish.
In their processor and dedicated graphics department, that might not be quite true. At least not anymore.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everybody's running up against just basically physics at this point when they're trying to get more out of a processor. We're down to like such small manufacturing nodes that it's like we're just running up against physics. So that's one of the reasons they started adding more cores. They couldn't make the processor go any faster. So like, let's just slap 2 of them on here. Okay, now 4, now 6, now 8. You know, and that's fine. It's fine. I'm happy. I'm happy with multi-core processing. Although at the beginning it was pretty bad because most applications were like, "What do you mean 2 processors?"
Yep.
I think we just need to stack all the cores on top of each other and make it so we have like a 6,000 core processor.
Kind of like an apartment building.
Then I can run Firefox with 6,000 tabs and it'll be fine.
No, you'd still run out of memory.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It'd be like the apartment building model of processor technology.
Yeah. And imagine those cores like right smack dab in the middle where they're like the farthest away from any cooling contact.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, those are just those are display models. So when somebody comes and looks at the core, they can go look at the one that's not doing anything because it can't get cooled. It's like a show home when in a housing tract.
Yeah. That's the show core.
So I got one more. People who do lie constantly about what their technology can do. We got apartheid Clyde, Elon Musk. He has let the former president back onto Twitter. We all knew he was going to do it. It didn't matter. The former president seems to be in an agreement with his own social network, the Truth Social, and to my knowledge, at this time, has not tweeted. He's not said anything on Twitter. I don't know. Maybe Ivanka won't let him. Who knows? But we knew this was going to happen. Elon is unsuspending a lot of accounts. I applied to get my old Plex_Dave account unsuspended. I don't think that will be forthcoming. That account had a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Of note, Elon Musk is not unsuspending Alex Jones. And can either of you guess why I think he's not doing it?
Don't know.
Did Alex Jones make fun of him?
Alex Jones has been bad-mouthing Elon Musk for a decade. So
I didn't know that.
the
thinnest of skin.
The personal grievance. And Trump hasn't really bad-mouthed him or whatever. I don't think this matters. I think that a lot of people are mad about it, whatever. But I do know that a couple of the Twitter executives quit when he decided to do that. And that's fine. He was probably going to fire them anyway. Didn't like anybody.
Does he have any employees to reinstate these accounts?
Yeah, I think so. There's still 2,700 people. There's still 2,700 people there. But what I understand is the HR department's gone, so I don't know how those 2,700 people are going to get paid.
I think he's just down to essentially the H-1B workers, the workers that are like forced to be there. But then again, like, you know, forced labor, Elon Musk, those two phrases go hand in hand.
Yeah, he hasn't his at Tesla. It's like basically like a 2-tier system where the engineers and the executive staff are treated fairly well, but if you work in that factory, you are not treated very well at all. You are expected to work. You are expected to do physical labor for longer than you probably should, and you know, we're seeing some other stuff going on here. Maybe next week we'll end up talking about it. He's already starting to get into trouble with Germany because Germany has some laws about certain kinds of speech that if you're going to operate in Germany, you have to take it down immediately because of historical events in the country of Germany that might make their people and their government a little more sensitive to certain kinds of rhetoric. And so he's already going to get tested by them, and like the people who work in government compliance, most of them are gone, which is not great if you're running a country or company. But I mean, my prediction is that within a couple months, he's going to get either frustrated or bored with Twitter, hire some other CEO, make it that person's problem, then complain about that person and fire them, and then hire another CEO, make it that person's problem, complain about them, and then fire them, and then they'd probably just sell Twitter to Microsoft.
Yeah, for like pennies on the dollar.
Oh yeah.
For like
he'll sell it for like
million or something, you know.
Yeah, he'll probably sell it for around $1 billion.
Yeah, people say that when he purchased it, it might have really been worth maybe 8 to 10.
Yeah,
maybe. And so he paid 4x for it, and since then it's, you know, it went private, so we don't know. Like, there's no stock price for it to dive, so we don't know. But we do see second order effects, and by that I mean the Tesla stock. These are not, you know, they're not like inextricably linked, but they're not discrete from one another either, with him being the public face of Tesla. And yeah, I don't know. I just think I think he just brought Trump back because he could, and he wanted to like show people that he could. And I don't think he'll bring back. Yeah, he's not going to bring back Alex Jones, because Alex Jones called him like a cyborg or something. I forget what he did. He said something weird about him. Anyway, that's my stuff for the week. Certainly not as interesting as Matt, who I found out where Russell J Gould, where his language came from. It came from the Lisp programming language. If you don't know what that is, tune in on Fridays for Conspiracy Bingo. We do cover Russell J Gould. It took me a while to learn to say that. And
I need to look up that language just to see if it has any actual thing to it.
And looks like since you weren't here last week, I guess who gets to read us out? It's HK.
All right. Well, just like Dave said, we have other shows, and if you want to check them out, go to echoplexmedia.com. You can check us out on twitch.tv/echoplexmedia. And if you want to give us money, you can check us out at patreon.com/echoplex. Don't find us on Twitter. Find us on Mastodon at port87.social. And I hope you had a techin' great week, and we'll see you next time. I think when I do the logos this week, I'm going to put the Twitter logo upside down on the thumbnail.
Can you make it? Can you also like put an X where the I would be? Because that's how in a cartoon they used to symbolize that people are dead.
Yes, I will definitely do that.